Well, welcome to the show. I'm so excited for our special guest today. Please welcome Kat Katrich. And I'm so excited to talk to you today, Kat. I love your program. I can't wait to share that with our watchers. So go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what it is that you do and how you came to be here today and why autism is such on your heart.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's kind of a big question. There's so much there. So stop me if I'm talking too much, but I've actually been working with people with autism for over 20 years now. I started right in college. I majored in family social science at the University of Minnesota, and right away I was working with kiddos in a day treatment center, and I loved it. I loved the kids. I started working in a wide variety of ways. So I also worked in schools. I worked in families' homes. One of the families that I worked with taught me ABA. So this was way, 20 years ago before it was all over the place now. And so they had flown somebody in and taught us how to do it. And that same family, ABA, which is most of your listeners probably know is like a main autism therapy these days. But then that same family also introduced me to the Sunrise program. And they showed me a DVD at the time. It was a BBC documentary called I Want My Little Boy Back. And it showed the story of this one family that found the Sunrise program. And before they had come to the Sunrise program, they were actually from England. We work with families all over the world. And they were from England, and you saw like the BBC followed them around and showed the life, which looked very chaotic, and there was a lot of tantruming going on, and this poor little boy was frequently overwhelmed and really couldn't do much. And then their family flew to the Autism Treatment Center of America, which is the home of the Sunrise program. And they were introduced to a new way of understanding their child and knowing their child and teaching their child. And then the documentary showed it all. So it showed the family learning, the parents learning from the staff. It showed the staff playing with the child. It showed the parents playing with the child. And everything that I saw on that documentary was like something I had never seen before in anything that I had been doing. It was fun. It was happy. It was exciting. And I was like, sign me up. So in 2007, I came to the Autism Treatment Center of America, which is located in Massachusetts, and did my training. And ever since then, I've been happy to say that documentary was not a lie. It's really truly fun. What I get to do on a day-to-day basis of seeing kids learn through play and teaching families how to connect with their own children and do that, and also see the profound learning that can happen through it. I love what I do. I'm so excited to share it with more and more and more people through your platform. So thank you, Susan.
Yes, ma'am. I'm so excited to hear. So, for those of us who aren't familiar with it or don't know, what exactly is the Sunrise program? Because you kind of told us a little bit about the background of it and kind of how it came to be. So, what is the Sunrise program and how does that differ from other programs?
Yeah, so, well, I didn't quite tell you the background of the Sunrise program, so I could start there. I told you my background.
Right.
The Sunrise program has a much longer background than me. So while I've been doing it for 20 years, the Sunrise program has existed really for almost 50 years, because that was when the first little boy, who was the original Sunrise program, he really came to be. And so this was actually created by his parents. So a little boy, his name was Ron, back in the 70s. When he was diagnosed with autism, he was less than 2. His parents recognized right away that he was different than his brothers and sisters. He really was in his own world. He didn't look, he didn't talk, he didn't really want anything to do with people. He spent most of his time flapping and rocking. He actually loved to spin dinner plates. He would get this plate and like spin it. And so they recognized that he wasn't like their other children. And so when they brought him to the professionals said, he has autism. We're so sorry for you. This is a tragedy. They really framed it as a sad, hopeless thing that was going on with their child. And they recommended, this was back in the 70s. Again, now autism is like 1 in 30. Back then it was like 1 in 10,000. So they didn't really have a lot of experience. So they said, maybe we'd be able to teach him to feed himself one day, but their recommendation was to put him in an institution. And the families did travel and look to see what was available, and what they saw wasn't very caring, wasn't very warm in these institutions, and they really wanted something different for their child. So they didn't really have a plan, but they had hope, and they had
Right.
this like real strong personal belief in like anything is possible, and really in their ability to control their attitude and have and find happiness and love with Ron, no matter that he was autistic. That didn't matter to them. It was not a tragedy. Their child was a gift. And so Samaria, the mom, the parents were Barry Neil Kaufman and Samaria Kaufman. I'll just say that real quick. But Samaria really took the lead in wanting to connect with her child and wanting more for him. And so she started working with her son in a bathroom. We don't recommend that anymore. But the Sunrise program started in a bathroom because she recognized that he had a really hard time paying attention and he was very easily distracted. So she wanted to bring the focus on them. But he still didn't want anything to do with her. He still didn't pay attention to her. And he was very much in his own world, doing his own little things. And she just wanted to find a way to show Ron that she loved him and that it was fine for him to be like that. And she wanted to connect with him. So she started doing all of the things that he was doing on his own with him. So when he was flapping, she started flapping. When he got that dinner plate and was spinning it, she got her own dinner plate and just sat there with him, loving him, doing these things with him. And after doing this for a while, for the first time, he started looking at her for the first time ever. And so she kept doing it, and he looked more and more and was engaging more and more. And so through whatever he was interested in, whatever he would play with her with, she started to teach him. And she really was really respectful of where he was at. And after playing with him in this sort of style, joining him when he was in his own world and playing and teaching him with him when he was more engaged, she was able to teach him everything. He learned first words, he learned how to talk, he learned how to play. He had siblings and they really became involved with it. And after a couple of years of really doing this intensively, he lost all traces of autism. He was able to go to a mainstream school, kindergarten, and thrive and continue to do really, really well. And now continues to do really well. He's a teacher in his own right and travels the world, and he's married, and he graduated from the top Ivy League, or a top Ivy League university. And then to the dad, I just really wanted to tell you all this. So the dad wrote a book. There is a book called Sunrise. This documents the whole thing. Sunrise, the Miracle Continues. And it tells the whole story. And then that book actually got turned into a movie, which you can find on Netflix
Oh,
or
nice.
YouTube. Yeah, it's called Sunrise, the Miracle of Love. And it's like an old 80s made for TV, like after school special kind of thing. It's really cute and adorable, but you can watch it. And then after that came out, people all over the world watched it. And so then they um, created the Autism Treatment Center of America because people started asking, how can we do this? How can we do this? How can we do this?
Right.
That's how it started. So do you want me to answer the question of how it's different than other therapies?
Sure. Yeah. I was really, I hadn't heard of your program before we talked. And so
Yeah.
it was really interesting to me to hear this different approach because it really makes a lot of sense. And, we, I think, use some aspects of it instinctively, but
Mhm.
I don't think we're kind of honed in or trained in on the skill and technique of it. So I really want our viewers to really get this information. To me, this is important. Anytime I can be a resource or share a resource, I'm all about it. So I'm just gonna let you
Yeah.
share your thing because that's what you're here for, and I'm excited to have you.
Yeah, it depends how much time we have because I could even give you guys some techniques today if we have time. But what the biggest difference I think at the Sunrise program is that we really believe that parents are their child's best resource. So this
Mhm.
this program was created by parents, and like you said, people are very intuitive with some of the things that they do, and oftentimes they're told by other people not to do those things, but yet there are things that you want to do. You want to love your child, you want to follow their lead, you want to give them everything. And in the Sunrise program, we really teach you how to do that, how to be the one to really make a really big difference in your child. And we really believe that parents are the best resource. You know them the most, you love them the most. you want the most for them and you spend a lot of time with them. So you
Uh,
are the perfect.
well, actually, a question did just come to mind while you were talking, so I'll go ahead and pose that.
Yeah.
As we know, our kids are prone to different behavioral issues. Not talking about the stimming and things like that, but actual, meltdowns and other behaviors. And obviously, we don't want to reinforce those. Do you have guidelines as to you want to reinforce these, but if you see that, stop that in its tracks?
Yeah. So first of all, one of the key pieces that we really help you with as a parent is to feel comfortable. And that's one of the biggest pieces of helping your child as well. And we have some, like I said, the initial founders really had done that work on themselves before they had a child with autism. And that's sort of foundational, is really believing in you, no matter what's going on in your life, you can't control what happens with your child. You can't control what they're going to do on a day-to-day basis or a moment-to-moment basis, but you are always in control of your own attitude. And that's a really huge piece of the Sunrise program, because especially what we're talking about here, the more comfortable you can be with whatever's happening with your child, the easier it's going to be for you to handle that in the moment. So we have a pretty empowering way of looking at challenges and talk, like if you were to take a class with us, we can talk you through any sort of challenges you have and figure out what beliefs you might be having that can hold you back. And we can help you change those, which can make a phenomenal difference in how you feel. So basically, we say, give your child lots of love and attention and have fun with them and play with them and teach them through that play and respond quickly to any communication that they're giving you in that moment. However, if that turns into somehow crying, whining, hitting, we call them intense behaviors. We don't call them aggressive because we don't believe the children are intending to be aggressive in that moment. It's more of like what's happening for them internally and build up. So give lots and lots of attention when they're doing play and having fun and using their words. But if they switch over to crying, whining, anything like that, hitting, then we're actually going to get really slow and confused. So just like you said, like just sort of a neutral thing. And again, your attitude is key there, because if you're feeling uncomfortable or worried or like, why is this happening? Then you're going to react. And you're going to give them that big reaction, which may be what they're looking for in the moment, which could continue it. So being really slow, I don't understand what that means right now. We do try to offer a sensory alternative if that's maybe what they're craving, like if you're pinching or hitting or pulling something, we can try that, but we're going to do it very slow, very calm. And oftentimes we see that if you can do that consistently, now the consistency is key there, because you have to have everybody do the same thing. Because if mom is, oh, I don't understand what this whining means, but as soon as you go to dad, he's like, oh, just take it. Here's the cookie. Well, now we're teaching the child that we just got to go to dad, or we just got to cry for 30 minutes and then we get it. So it's really everybody in the family being consistent and giving that positive attention,
Right,
most of the time, so that way it's really clear to the child that it's just not effective communication. Crying, whining, hitting, it's not going to get you what you want. But
right,
speaking and being kind and sweet and regulated, that is going to be really helpful for you.
right.
Does that make
Gotcha.
sense?
What's that?
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I know, especially as kids get older and, biologically and developmentally, their developmental age is going to be different than their chronological age, but they still have that chronological age development, and sometimes they clash. I know at certain ages, I would struggle with, okay, how much of this behavior is, the teenager, and how much of this is the autism? Is it a combination of both? That line is so hard to differentiate when they get older, because they do have these uh, natural age appropriate tendencies, whether they're that developmental age or not.
Yeah,
And I
hormones.
know that was always a challenge. So,
Yeah. So one of the things in the Sunrise program that's different is when we teach a child versus, so like a lot of other autism therapies, or maybe even parents who are dealing with teenagers, you might have an agenda of something that you want to accomplish. And I'm going to say that this about most autism therapies or even schools, they have an idea of what they want the child to accomplish, and they're going to go after it regardless kind of what's happening with the child. And the Sunrise program, we first want to help parents understand their child and what's going on for them first. And this is particularly helpful in the teenage years as well, but it's really, really useful no matter what. And we call it red lights and green lights. And that's really important because our children with autism have so many sensory challenges. So what their experience is in their body is very different than a neurotypical person. And so sometimes it can be hard to remember that. And so we really teach parents how to recognize what we call as red light. So if your child's not paying attention to you, they're not looking at you, they're not responding. Sometimes it might be stimming or playing alone. That's a red light. They're actually not in a space where they can really learn or take you in that moment. And so instead of trying to teach them in that moment, we would actually suggest to give them that space. And you can actually use that time to bond with them by doing whatever they're doing. Now, in teenagers or some maybe highly verbal kids, for example, their red lights might look a little different. Might not be completely exclusive, but they might be like saying no, or they might be highly rigid, or they only want to ask certain questions or talk about certain things. These are also a sign that your child is in a red light. And so that wouldn't be the time to try to teach them or be like, I need to empty the dishwasher right now, because it's like your child's already sort of in an over loaded space. And so when you can recognize that and be like, oh, this isn't defiant behavior, this isn't a problem child here, this is just them struggling in their body. And so they just need some space, some time, some love. And then we have a green light. So that would be like a red light. We're going to give them space and bond. And then in a green light moment, we actually can teach them and we can engage with them. But we're also going to, the difference between the Sunrise program versus other programs is we're going to find out what's interesting to that child or teenager first. And we're going to bond with them through their motivations, doing what they like to do. And then we're going to sneak in our teaching, whether that be social skills teaching, learning languages, learning how to deal with your friends, learning how to deal with your boss, like whatever the challenge is, we're going to talk about it and work through it in a way that that is fun for that person. So
that is such an effective way. I pulled my daughter out of school in the middle of third grade, as I was a single mom, but I still pulled her out and I homeschooled her for 7 years. And
me cheering you.
Yes, accolades. But that works so well because I could make the curriculum fit her. So I didn't have to make her fit the curriculum. And whenever she had an interest in something, that's what I would kind of run with. She had taken interest in early female aviation. So of course we did Amelia Earhart and all those things, women Air Force service pilots, but I would, learn, include science and different things in that. Hey, let's go to the museum and look at her plane. Well, gee, what's it made of? How does that differ from what other planes are made of? And this and that, and different things like that. And it's such an effective way because they're going to give you that attention, but they're also going to learn. And I also have applied that in my years as a doing physical therapy with stroke patients and things like that. The environment is so important.
Yes.
A lot of times you'll see that in stroke patients. I know this isn't necessarily related to autism, but it's interesting to me because it's those neurological issues that are similar, and I've done that where if I know, okay, I've got this stroke patient and I know if I bring them down here when everybody's in the gym, I'm not going to get a very good session with them. So I'll either see them in their room or wait till the gym is empty and bring them down at a quiet time, put them in an area of the gym where there's less going on. Maybe there's not as much stimulus in the environment where they can really concentrate and really get that in-depth one-on-one,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not always about quantity, it's
It
about
is
quality.
very similar. That is actually one of
Yeah.
our big components too, is we the environment is a big deal. Like the sensory challenges, especially like in schools,
Yes.
you think like, oh, it's a place of learning, but it's a place of learning designed for neurotypical kids who need a lot of stimulation, who like that. But for kids with autism, all that extra sounds and people and demands, and people who don't understand that when they're stimming, that means they're overloaded, or if
Yes.
they're running, it means they're overloaded. And so yeah, that's one of the pieces of the Sunrise program too, is we help parents create those non-distracting rooms that take out all of that extra overwhelm. And the added benefit, like you said, it really helps the child focus on you, which is the
Right. Yeah.
central
And
piece.
oh, I had a comment, it went right out of my head. Anyway, yeah, that's super important. And I think I know that I was a travel agent for a while. So thinking of kids with autism and vacation. We all know as parents with kids with autism, vacation, not so much of a good thing. But I know some of the cruise lines are trying to learn and accommodate where, they'll have that quiet room on
Yes,
the
thank
ship
goodness.
where you're
Sensory
taking them
spaces are
to.
becoming like everywhere. I love that. I love
The
that.
challenge I find there, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it seems like, I don't know, around age 12 or so is where the cutoff for a lot of these is. And so I know in some insurance companies and even with some of the cruise lines and things like that, those rooms are reserved for, 12 and under. And so
Really?
my
Aw.
problem was, look, my kid doesn't magically become neurotypical when she turns 13. This is a lifelong neurodevelopmental, the way my brain is wired thing. It's not going to go away. They're not going to be quote unquote cured. You know, First of all, it's not a disease, so they're not going to be cured. It's just a different way the brain works.
Yeah.
And so understanding that, I think, goes a long way to help as well.
Yeah, the more people who really understand, and there, like I said, there's a whole host of sensory challenges. Every kid is so different. They've got this great phrase, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, but there's a whole, it's kind of a whole body thing. Some kids can be really affected by diet. Some kids are much more affected visually. Then some kids also have apraxia or other things that can make communication and moving their body
Right.
incredibly difficult. So then you get kids who who want to talk, who can totally understand everything. By the way, we really
Right.
believe that kids can understand. Just because they can't communicate or move their body in the way or maybe pay
Right.
attention to you does not mean that they can't understand. So and again, there it's understanding where the child's at, understanding what they're motivated for, and finding a way to make it make fun. I remember this one session I was doing, like for a while I was traveling all over, going into families' homes, and I would play with their child, and they would bring different people to come watch. And this little boy, who had apraxia, um, they brought in, for the one session I had, they brought in their speech therapist and all their other therapists to come watch this session. And I played with him for 2 hours, and he was saying blueberry, and he was saying all these different swing and move. And at the end of the session, we had a Q&A, and they're like, oh my gosh, we have been working on these kind of words for months and months and months. And you go in there, and in 2 hours, he's saying all this with you. Like, how is that possible? And it's just like, it's through fun, it's through play, it's doing whatever he wants to do, and really believing is another key piece. We have to believe. If we don't believe our children have the capability, we're not going to try these things with them. But the brain, regardless of the age, I mean, we've helped adults learn how to talk, but it's always possible. So you got to believe,
Right.
and then
Right.
you got to work with them in a way that feels good to them. So you're right.
Well, and feeling good to them doesn't always mean comfortable. I found for me and my daughter, as she got older and the expectation from some society became greater, that I had to push her outside of her comfort zone some because, you know, the neurotypical world is not built for these people with autism. They have to fit into that world because that world's not going to fit them. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality that we're in right now. And so, I've always believed if you set the bar low, you're going to get low. If you set the bar high, they're going to strive to achieve that, whether they can make it all the way or not. They're going to get the most ability that they possibly can get, and their potential is not going to be wasted. And I think that is huge for me. I hate wasted potential. That's, I've been a therapist for 30 years and I hate seeing wasted potential in anyone. And I think it's important to kind of, and there's boundaries there. You don't want to push so hard that they shut down, but you don't want to just, oh, this is what they're comfortable with, so I'm going to leave them in that comfort zone. We have to push that boundary a little bit at a time and see where they end up. My daughter today, she lives on her own. She drives, she's able to work part-time, and I would have never been able to get her to that point if I had just left her in her comfort zone. And unfortunately, I see that a lot. And I don't know if you see that too in these older teens, young adults, where the expectations for them have been lowered. And so that's where they kind of plateau and stop. They're not going to push themselves.
Yeah, I think that is a really important point, especially because there's so much parents can do. And I would suggest working with your child yourself and doing those things and then noticing where their discomforts are out in the world, and then coming back and then being able to work with them yourself one-on-one in a highly supportive environment, and then think, okay, what was the challenging part of this? Let's role play that. Let's do that again. Again, you want to find their motivations, you want to see what's interesting to them so it can be fun for them, because maybe it's dinosaurs, maybe it's Lincoln Logs. Like, there's a lot of ways that you can bring in whatever they're interested in, but then
Right.
using those real world challenges, that are out there that they're having, whether that be
Mhm.
school, whether that be jobs, whether that be other people, other girls. I know girls can be can be a challenge in and of themselves, and
That's a
then
whole new
coming
ball
back.
game.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's right around that 12-year-old, even maybe a little younger. Like the girls get clicky, and their social
Yeah.
skills get tricky to try to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
They say one thing, do they mean that thing? And what does that mean for me? And again, when we're talking about the attitude, that attitude of the parents is key, but the more you feel in control of your own attitude, the more you can help your child also have that sort of empowering experience of, regardless of what anybody else in the world says, I'm still
Right.
going to be comfortable with me. And the more you can teach your child about what works for them and how to advocate for themselves and how to take breaks when they
Yeah.
need breaks, that's really
Yeah.
important for people with
Yeah.
autistic people, however we say it. I say it all the ways. All the ways these days, but the more you can advocate for them and work on those skills in a safe place. But yeah, keep growing.
Well, and I think you hit the
Always.
nail on the head with teaching them to advocate for themselves. I know that was a hard, hard thing for my daughter because those teenage years, you don't want to feel different. You want to fit in. You want to be the same as everybody, even though you're just not. And different is not less. Different is different. And so, really getting her to accept that within herself and realize, hey, this is who I am. This is part of me. I'm a great person. I'm a good friend. I'm fun to be around. I have all these other qualities. I'm not defined by my autism. It affects how the lens I view the world through, but it's just a part of who I am. And if I can get comfortable sharing that, then that's going to open so many doors. I mean, there's still going to be stereotypes and there's still a lot of advocacy and education that needs to go on. I know that in my generation, the only thing you heard about autism was, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Rain Man, and that was
Mhm.
more the what we used to call
Yeah.
the lower level or lower functioning um, adult with autism. But now I know that people are aware it's a spectrum. They might not understand all the intricacies of that, but there's still so much more that needs to be talked about, that needs to be brought to people's attention. And, that was the whole reason that I started this program, was to just use this platform to share those things. And I just, I'm so excited about the Sunrise program. I think it's spot on, right on the money.
Yeah.
I think we just need more of that, more things like that. Supported living environments where you have these places where these people can be independent, but maybe have somebody around in case they hit a snag. Or, sometimes it's hard for us to self-reflect, even when we're neurotypical. So we
Yeah.
might not realize or see, hey, I'm kind of going through a little rough patch here. Maybe I need to talk to the doctor about adjusting my meds or something like that, where we might not be able to see that, but having someone around that can say, hey, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Have you talked to the doctor about this? Or do you think, just kind of keeping them aware of everything in focus. So I wanted to go back a little bit to when we were talking about the spectrum and the different types of people on the spectrum, and you were saying about how um, they all have their own idiosyncrasies or quirks. Um, I like to describe it as autism is a giant block of Swiss cheese. And you cut off a slice, you might have 2 or 3 slices in a row from the same block that you just cut.
Yeah.
But if you look at the holes, which would be the I don't want to call them deficits, that's a PT word, but the challenges,
Challenges. Yeah.
they might be really similar, but they're going to be slightly different. 5 slices down the way, oh, there's not a hole there at all, but there's one over here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I'm a visual person, so it was a neat way, I think, for me to look at it, in that it's all one thing, and everybody's different, every slice is different, but you have those similarities. And I think it's really important, like you said, to recognize that, and also to understand that autism never lives alone. There's always other diagnoses, other things going on there that are going to complicate things and really make that person unique. I know you talked about apraxia. I know my daughter has multiple learning disabilities. She has dysgraphia, where it was difficult to manipulate the pencil to be able to write and things like that. Just the motor movements were hard, let alone the head to hand to paper connection. And different things like that. I have friends whose kids have, one of my friend's sons has a very, very rare genetic disease
Yeah.
on top of everything. A lot of times there's a lot of bipolar that runs through there, a lot of GI issues and different things like that. So understanding that it doesn't live alone, and there's this unique mixture of these different things going on in every single person, I think separates, the good clinicians or good people from the great ones. Where if we understand that, the more we can grasp that, the more we're able to reach out and help others, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that we give parents in the Sunrise program is we call it the social developmental model. And it really breaks down. So the 4 things that we work on are really social skills, because everything, that's what we see to be the biggest challenge. So we work on interactive attention span, which just means being able to pay attention longer and longer and longer, which a lot of people complain about, but I hardly ever see any other program actually working on that skill. So that's like our first fundamental skill, is just being able to pay attention, which
I think
you
I
need
need that.
all. Yeah, right? I can work with you. So you're doing great here. This is it's a really long show. But anyway, just working on that first, and then after the interactive attention span, we also work on communication skills, from first words all the way to conversations. We work on eye contact, which the way we do it in the Sunrise program is very easy. We never force it, but we do inspire it and we
Mhm.
encourage it. And we, again, through motivations, it's actually it's a skill that is actually pretty easily developed in a lot of people. You can take in a lot of information in the eyes, so it can be really helpful. But
Right.
anyway, eye contact and then flexibility, which can be a challenge for a lot of our kids, just being able to do things. And we find that when you focus on those skills, and we have a whole model, so we break all them down. So you talk about the Swiss cheese, and I'm like, oh yeah, because we have like stage 1
Right.
through stage 5, and you might have a child that's like got a really great attention span. They might be like stage 4, stage 5 even, but then they're like stage 1 on flexibility. They won't let you do anything, or you might have a child who can talk a lot but has no attention span, so it's like we really address it in terms of like those models, and we see that once kids have a certain amount of all those social skills, then
Right.
you can actually be in a lot of different environments and still learn really well, and you could do school if that makes sense at that point, but it's not the academics that's the challenge. Many of
Right.
these kids are very, very smart. It's just being
Right.
able to handle all the socialness and all the sensory challenge too, which does improve as well over time. If when it's worked on in an easy, fun way, it can
Right.
improve.
Right.
I can't say
When
it always improves. That's not always true. So I don't want to like put a big thing out there,
yeah.
but it
Yeah. Well, nothing's foolproof. Again, everybody's individual. Like you said, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And part of that is because, going back to the Swiss cheese, the holes are going to be in different sizes and different places, but also there's going to be those multiple underlying co-diagnoses that you see. My daughter, from the time she was wee little, she had no problem talking. You know, we had to work on, okay, this is when you stop.
yeah, yeah.
These are the kinds of people you can talk to. You know, being able to establish and maintain appropriate personal safety boundaries is a huge thing with her. Even today, you know, and it's still challenging. She's gotten in the car with strangers multiple times. Fortunately, we live in a very rural area where everybody knows everybody, and it's
Mhm.
fairly
Goodness.
safe. I mean, you can talk stranger danger till you're blue in the face, but oh, they're not a stranger. Their name is Bob, and we're best friends now. it's it's just so important to keep your mind open
Yeah.
because there's so many different things it could be. But
Yeah.
I really love your program, and I love how you hear the cliches, oh, focused on the ability, not the disability, and all these different things. But how do you do that? It's like takes me back to when my daughter was first diagnosed back, if that was 17 years ago now, because she has turned 27. And everything I read said, oh, autism looks different in girls, but nothing ever told you how. And I'm going, tell me how.
Yeah.
And so just being able to walk people through that and educate them and teach them, is so huge. And I just think your program is so very, very, very important. And I'm thrilled about it. And I'm so thrilled that I could take the opportunity to share about it on here. And um, I would love to invite you back to come back and talk to us again. I'm putting together some panel discussions, which I think would be um, your perspective and your experience, I think would be very, very beneficial for that if you're up for that. So we can always,
Yes, yes.
talk
And let
about
me just
that more.
quick say, if anybody wants to learn more, I told Susan before, I'm starting I'm starting to get on social media. I'm having to make videos on TikTok and stuff. So we're all over social media. You can find it's underneath the Sunrise program, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and then on our website, autismtreatmentcenter.org. We've got classes, we've got online classes, we got live classes. So lots and lots of ways for people to learn.
So you don't always have to go to New England now.
Right. We don't, yeah, nowadays Zoom, like you've got this technology down and so do we. So you can do it from the comfort of your own home all over the world, but still make a lot of great friends. It's a wonderful community. And we also have Sunrise Program advisors. So the very first phone call you can have right away, people can tell you, give you some tips and inspiration, and then they actually stay on with you. So you get to always have somebody to call and be like, I'm having a hard day. We got you. We got you.
Yeah, I was so very blessed to have a wonderful autism advocate. Her name was Rachel. She since passed away, but I know there were definitely times where I called Rachel, I don't know what to do. Help. So that is such an amazing resource to have. Just thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today and sharing your wonderful program. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks.